What's up, YouTube? We're back with another weapon review video. This time we're going to be discussing the DMRs, marksman rifles, and also the plasma accelerator rifle, which received some big changes a little bit earlier this year. Starting off with actually one of my favorite marksman rifles that currently are in the game, and I think is honestly underutilized by the community, mostly down to the fact that people have this adverse effect when it comes to light pen weapons, is the amendment. 200 damage, which is on par with your Diligence counter sniper, although it's light pen, but it has really good durable damage. It's actually on par with the Diligence counter sniper. So if you know where to shoot on these enemies, you will often do extremely high damage to weak points in particular. Also, it has a very good fire rate if you're willing to spam fire it. It does have a burst fire function on it, but I tend to just put it in single fire, and then you can actually fire it faster than in burst fire if your trigger finger is fast enough. As far as attachments, it only gains scopes, but there's a fantastic scope on it. It has the 1.5x scope. Since they buffed the ergonomics on it, I do think you can put it on like a 4x and not really notice it, or it'll feel very similar to it was before with a much lower powered scope. It's a light pen weapon. You got to aim at weak points, but this thing shreds even bugs. You will obviously struggle against any medium pen enemies, but because it's a precision-based weapon, you can get like that armpit area below a Hive Guardian. You can one-shot Devastator eyes, and because of the high durable damage, I believe it's 4 shots to one of the legs of a Devastator, and if you're not aware, if you kill a leg of a Devastator, they just instantly die. So shoot at one leg. It one-shots the rockets on a rocket strider. It is a well-versed weapon, and it feels good in your hands, and it feels very rewarding to get those good shots. I highly recommend giving it a try if you haven't already. The amendment, I think, lies somewhere in the A- tier for bugs. It'll be sometimes hard to use against bugs if you're not quite good at pacing your shots, or at least just making sure that you're aiming more towards the mouse of enemies. Definitely more of like a hard to use weapon on the bug front, and it also doesn't have a stagger because you can't really rely on missing a shot and staggering. So somewhere in the A- B+ range, depending on accuracy. On the bot front, I think it's an easy A sell for me. I love using this thing on the bot front. It's extremely satisfying personally. And then on Illuminate, I do really like this thing against flush mobs and things like that. So I'd probably give this thing also like an A- tier. I know some people are going to be freaking out, but the bayonet comes in a lot of use when dealing with the vote list. The fire rate is fantastic for just mag dumping the chests of overseers, and then flesh mobs do get eviscerated by this thing because of the sheer fire rate if you have a fast trigger finger. It's a lot better than I think people really do make it out to be. Going into the next one, we have the Constitution, more or less the challenge meme weapon of it. This does have a bayonet, which is probably the biggest selling factor on the weapon, along with the amendment, and we'll get into that now. Bayonets tend to go, or like melee weapons in general, tend to go through armor and hit squishy bits below the armor. So you can go up behind a tank and just start meleeing the radiator. Or if you have a stunned charger in front of you, you could just melee his leg, and the bayonet's actually hitting the squishy orange bar below the charger. Don't do that against support chargers. They go boom, you die. Just be careful. Bayonets definitely are not always the best, but they can also save you some ammo against the smaller bugs and stuff like that that can't really hit you back. Constitution has medium pen, which is nice, but the fire rate and sheer just like rounds per minute is quite low. If you do have decent accuracy, I do think you can like make it work pretty well on bots, especially since there's not nearly as much pressure on you a lot of time. I like the Constitution. I just wish it maybe gotten some other attachments. If it got a scope or like strip magazine so you can like reload like 5 rounds at a time, I think there could be some really cool stuff there. It's overall probably somewhere in the C tier across all factions. I won't really recommend using it. It does have the redeeming factor of at least having a bayonet and being medium pen, but it's a slow reload unless you put the armor on, and although it has a good ammo economy, it's really hard to get that ammo economy to work because it's just such a slow fire rate and really slow. So I'm probably going to put it blanketly like C, C-, but I think that's okay. It's supposed to be the meme challenge weapon that you just kind of mess around with when you're looking to spice up the difficulty. Next is the Deadeye, personal favorite of mine, just because I love my medium pen cowboy gun. It's really fun. Just don't ever like fully expend the entire magazine of the weapon, and you will definitely feel at times that you want the siege ready armor. I do think it's definitely usable without it, but you will probably lean more on it. I really like this thing on all the factions, honestly. Probably its weakest faction, at least to me, would probably be Illuminate. On bugs, I think this thing can be quite useful. It's just the fire rate and the reload can get you killed. So that's why you got to be careful about not missing shots. This weapon will definitely be lower if you feel like you're having trouble being consistently accurate on the bug front. But once you get the hang of it, I find this weapon weapon to be very satisfying to use. So it's probably more towards B+ for many players just because of how slow the fire rate is at a base. But if you tend to have like a more paced shot and you're like have good shot groupings on enemies and you know where to hit and you can utilize that stagger, I do think it's like probably an A-, but probably B+ at least for most players. Okay, going to bots, this thing just shines, especially if you put on one of the higher magnification scopes. It just feels really good. The reload speed doesn't really become much of a bother just because you have so much more time to deal with the slower moving bots. The stagger is fantastic for stopping enemies in those one-on-one situations where they're really close. Good overall range and damage and durable. It's medium pen, just feels really good. Good ammo economy as well. Next, for the Diligence, I would definitely recommend treating the Diligence very similar to the Amendment in how you operate with the weapon. You're definitely going to be wanting to go for weak spots. It doesn't have the same durable damage and it does have a little bit of a damage decrease, but it does perform relatively close to the Amendment. It just feels like a more like stable weapon platform while also having the greater capacity and getting a little bit of extra attachments because you can start going with like the vertical foregrip for a little bit tighter shot grouping. And then I go for muzzle breaker flash hider usually when it comes to this marksman rifle. I found the Diligence to tend to play a little bit nicer on the bug where the Amendment tended to play a little bit better on the Illuminate or bots. The regular Diligence feels better versus bugs, so I would probably give it actually an A- on bugs. I do think people kind of sleep on this weapon a little bit because it's just been around for so long, but the 25 round magazine feels really good on bugs. On bots, it's going to be a little bit lower than the Amendment in my opinion, just because it doesn't have that extra utility of the bayonet, but I don't think by any means it's a bad weapon. It is a little bit more stable because you can put different attachments. So if you want more of like a medium to long range variant of the Amendment, you might actually value it more than that. I think it's like an A- on bots overall. On Illuminate, I didn't enjoy it as much. It is better against the voteless if you're just shooting them, you know, going for the leg shots, but I didn't enjoy it nearly as much for dropping the overseers and dealing with flesh mobs. The fire rate does suffer because you can't quite get the same fire rate out of the weapon, and the extra damage and lower durable does make a difference on the Illuminate front more so. So I'd say probably like B+ on the Illuminate, probably closer to B. Next with the Diligence Counter Sniper, this is probably your go-to all-arounder, but the ergonomics is harder to enjoy. You may feel like you need to bring peak physique a lot of times or have a much more subdued play style. I do think the Diligence Counter Sniper has a little bit of trouble playing on bugs, especially if you like to play more aggressively. There are some attachments that I would recommend, like no barrel. I don't go for angle just because I find the vertical recoil gain from the angled is just not worth it. If you feel like you need even a little bit more ergonomics, you can go for no attachment on that one as well. But I think flash hider is a worthy sacrifice just to get a little bit tighter shot grouping. 1.5x tube makes another return. I tend to not really need super long distance when I'm using a Diligence Counter Sniper, but if I was going to be doing a little bit longer ranges, obviously you have the 4x, which I highly recommend. I kind of wish this weapon had a 2x on it because it would have been that nice like in between to the 1.5 and the 4x, but it is what it is. The Diligence absolutely shines on the Illuminate. We're going to start off with that faction. This thing melts harvesters. It's probably overall the best harvester killing weapon in the game, and that might sound like really weird, but in the primary slot, it's really good and consistent at killing it. It's a little slow at killing the shield, but take down the shield, reload, and then if you're accurate, one mag to one of the forearms, like the thighs, and they're dead. It's really good at that, and it's very accurate, and it doesn't have a lot of recoil, so you can do it at decent range. Although the Dominator is faster, you have to be at a closer range because if they're moving around, that shell taking longer to get to them can definitely be affecting you. The ergonomics is slower for like the rest, but honestly, this thing is like easily A+, maybe even S, depending on how you feel about flesh mobs and stuff like that. You can bring the Stalwart and then this thing, and the Stalwart just deals with everything that maybe it might not be good with, but this thing does so well against harvesters. It's quite noticeable. For bots, it's easily A+, not quite S tier, just because the S tier category more or less tends to be like the Eruptor or the crossbow or just these other weapons that are just far more outshining it. But I don't think that this is a bad weapon at all. It has that medium pen, so even if you're not always hitting your shots, still doing like decent damage. You can deal with like radiators from the back at a distance. It just feels very good, and the ergonomics doesn't really play a factor because they're slower enemies. You don't need to be moving your weapon around nearly as much and having the flick shot all around. On the bug front, it's probably closer to an A-. The ergonomics does definitely suffer on it, but the medium pen does make a difference versus like the Amendment, for instance. Anytime you're shooting at light armor, you're doing 35% more damage just because of the damage difference between the two. But you will have a bigger trouble with like the occasional like hunter and stuff like that. So it's like pros and cons. So that's why I kind of rate it similar to the amendment, because you're better against the medium pen enemies, but you're going to suffer against the faster, more agile hunters. Our Accelerator rifle. I find the Accelerator rifle a lot better than what it used to be. What they did was they basically just removed the drag component of the round. Before, when you shot the plasma round, it would act like most weapons that are plasma, where they lose a lot of velocity very fast. But what happened was that really affected the damage even after like 10 meters. This gun lost a lot of its like pure like impact damage immediately because of that. So that's why I kind of just didn't feel like a sniper rifle while being a quote unquote sniper rifle when it first released. Since then, obviously they've removed it. It still has the same poor-ish ammo economy, unfortunately, but you can actually one-tap Brood Commanders in the head with all 3 shots. You can kill Chargers, I believe, with 3 charges to the butt, you know, aiming for the orange part. You can kill Impalers. I think it's within 3 bursts as well. As much as I want to say going for headshots would be worth it on Overseers because it's medium pen, it's not really worth it because the first shot flinches them, and then the next shots will probably miss because the first shot flinched them. Bit of an unfortunate side effect of it being a 3-round burst sniper. On the bot front, I think it's probably the strongest front just because you, once again, you don't have that much pressure, so you have time to deal with them. Quite good at dealing with Devastators, you know, one bursting them in the face quite reliably, dealing with gunships quite reliably, aim at the engine. You know, if you get a flank on a Hulk, it's not having a good day. If you get a flank on a tank or one of the turrets, it's really good because it's explosive. Overall, quite a strong weapon now. The burst fire on the bugs is actually like quite nice. It's just obviously you're not ad clearing with this thing, so it immediately comes down to maybe like B tier overall. It does have its niche though, so if you build around it, you know, you're good at taking out bile spewers and nursing spears because of the explosive damage in medium pen. You're pretty good at killing Chargers and Brood Commanders, but it does kind of suck against like just regular horde clearing on mass enemies. So you'll probably have to augment it somewhere else in your loadout to make sure you cover for that. On the bots, I'd say easy A-A. It just feels really good. Ammo is definitely still a little bit of a concern with this, but I think for like the average player, maybe playing around difficulty 7, I think you'll have plenty of ammo as long as you're hitting your bursts on the Devastators, and especially if you're bringing some other weapons alongside, you know, maybe drop that a little bit down if you find that the ammo is not quite to your liking, but I do think it performs much better than it used to. It's a massive glow up compared to the other weapons. If there's anything I would change about it, is maybe giving it more ammo at this point. Okay, and last with the Illuminate, I do think the Accelerator rifle at least manages to straddle a line between B plus A minus. It's actually quite good against flesh mobs because of the explosive component and medium pen. If you don't know, flesh mobs in general are just tend to be very weak to explosive damage because you're multi-hitting them with the explosion. The explosion's hitting all their eyes and, you know, doing more damage than just like what you see in front of you. Over on the Overseers, I think it does perform quite well. I do consistently get like maybe 1 to 2 bursts on an Overseer. You can get that juicy 1 if you get like a good chest shot on them. And then Harvesters, I don't really recommend using on Harvesters, but you can. The arms are just not particularly very weak to explosive damage, but you can in fact kill Harvesters with it, and definitely a lot more effectively than you used to be able to in the past. Obviously, you're not going to be using this for the vote list, which kind of drops it to like B plus B tier territory, depending on how it fits into your loadout as like, do you have something else for the vote list and so on and so forth. And that is our DMR video. I almost put the Dominator in there, but I guess I'm going to leave that for maybe our next video. Maybe I'll put it in with the shotguns or with the explosive, but I almost put it because it kind of ends up feeling like a DMR, but not exactly, just because it has lower range. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys are using for your marksman rifles, your long range builds. These are just my opinions after about 30 to 100 hours of Helldivers. They made a lot of changes to DMRs over the period, and they've added a lot of them. So I think the DMR class used to be one of the worst in the game, and it's now looking absolutely solid class of weapon, unlike maybe the SMGs, which are definitely a very much a mixed bag. I do think the marksman rifles are feeling good at the moment. Consider leaving a like on the video, consider leaving a comment down below, and hope you guys like the new format. Peace out, much love, bye everybody.